Welcome back, everyone, to the Q Code Podcast. Danny, Travis, and Alan here, minus one Trav today. But he is on a plane, actually heading to Utah right now as we speak. In fact, should be landing here in about 7 minutes.
What? So you're saying that he's leaving the state that initially had the big run-up in COVID to make sure he made it to the state that's now having the big run-up in COVID.
Yes.
He just can't get enough of that coronavirus, as my kids like to say in the Carol Baskin tone. They're always like, that coronavirus.
Okay.
I know someone who whenever he talks about it, he just calls it the Rona.
The Rona.
The Rona? Don't you call it the Rona sometimes?
No, I don't think I've ever called it the Rona.
I feel like you have on multiple occasions. I'm like, Trav, what do you think of all this coronavirus? And you're like, the Rona?
No, I don't. I don't know if I've ever said that. I also don't think it would be something that I'd be embarrassed to admit if I did say it.
It's like, whoa, I would never say that.
But welcome in, everybody, to another episode. We are heading into a new series of episodes that we will take on. The last series that we did was the conspiracy theories. This time we are going into something we're calling real versus real, and that is, real, R-E-E-L, for movies versus R-E-A-L for reality. So we're taking some of the biopic or biopic movies, however you want to say it, that we all know and love, but and then just kind of giving you an idea, because sometimes you watch these movies and they say based on a true story, and so you sit there and wonder what actually is based on a true story, because that is a very loose term. Or
I always just took it as law, it's but that's the thing. It's pretty much the real thing. It's like a documentary, just with actors.
Yeah, so all it has to do is have maybe a few things that actually happened, and then movie magic can happen, and they can do whatever they want.
They take artistic liberties.
Exactly. And so what we're doing in this series is bringing you the information that you may want to know. What actually did happen? What was just movie magic? What did they spice up and all that jazz? So that's what we are doing today. Alan is going to start us off with I'm assuming Apollo 13. That's what I've planned for. So got my buddies back here. I got three of my favorite actors. Tom Hanks, it's backwards for me. Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon.
Looks like your finger's just going up their nose.
Like Ace Ventura.
And then I know I just said that he's not one of my favorite actors, but I can't point at him. But he's a great actor. May he rest in peace. I can't remember his name at the moment.
Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, wasn't he one that you would bring back or something like that on our episode about celebrities?
I was pretty sad when he died, because he just he's never the lead dude, but he's always in good films.
Yeah. I mean, Twister is probably the one that sticks out the most.
I guess, yeah, that is his lead film. That is his one film.
But he's good in that. That was a good movie.
Yeah, well.
He's always just a supporting actor?
Most of the time, yeah.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. but that's fine. He made a career out of it, and he was great at it. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about that. However, to start us off, we have a quick question, which is, what is your favorite Tom Hanks movie and why? Mine's real simple. I'm not really going to go into it because I've talked about it ad nauseum on some of the other episodes if you've listened to it. But it's Saving Private Ryan. Favorite film of all time.
I could have never guessed that, Trav.
Nope, you couldn't guess it. But it also has a great supporting cast. Freaking Vin Diesel.
What?
Giovanni Ribisi.
Giovanni Ribisi.
Matt Ryan. Matt
Matt Ryan. Really?
Quarterback
For the Atlanta
Falcons.
Quarterback?
What's his name? Oh, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
That's the guy. Matt Damon. I've been
Matt
looking too much football stuff lately.
Whoever that guy is that says, we are going to find him and we are going to get him the hell out of there.
Great movie. Great lines. It's just great all around, but that's mine. Enough said.
Who's the
Well
guy?
done.
The guy he's like in Saving Private Ryan, he's like is he like Puerto Rican or he kind of has a little bit of an accent.
He's Jewish. The guy that was in Friends.
Yeah. He played like that crazy roommate in Friends.
Yeah.
No, he's Jewish. That's Mellish.
Mellish.
He's Jewish. Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know his real name. Actually, I do.
He's non-committal. He likes the name Mel, but he didn't want to commit, so he's Mellish.
But no, where that's
the ultimate trouble.
He's been in a bunch of different things that I've seen, but he's like one of those again, like he's in a lot of things, but you can't really remember.
Most of the time, he's not even supporting cast. He's just in the background. But yeah, good movie. What about you guys? Either one.
So I was gonna do Saving Private Ryan, but I knew you would probably do that one. So
of course. I called dance on Saving Private Ryan.
I went with Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump
is
also 100% true story.
Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to, but they're like, Forrest Gump, man, that does not hold up in today's world. And I was like, bull crap. Watch it.
It's a pretty amazing.
It's a great movie.
It's like if I were to describe it's like an epic without being an epic. Does that make sense?
Just because he goes through so much, like it goes through a lifetime, basically.
So many different parts of history that he's like a part of in the movie.
It is kind of like an interesting, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I like the movie Forrest Gump, but at the same time, it's depressing in some ways.
Well, yeah.
I don't really.
Jenny dies.
Yeah. Like, you want him to get like a happy ending so bad, but he does.
He does. He gets a son.
He gets little Forrest.
Yeah.
Well, I know. That's true. And wasn't there like an Apple involved? Like Apple computers?
Yeah, he
invested in Apple.
That's part he goes. And he goes, Lieutenant Dan put our money in some Apple company. And he said, we didn't have to worry about money no more. I said, well, that's good.
But part of the reason I chose that too is because I think all of us love quoting movies. And that movie just has so many quotes that you can whip out on a daily basis.
Case in point, what just happened. So,
yeah. I usually quote the part where he's like, you can get fried shrimp, you can have other kind of shrimp, shrimp scampi, whatever he names a lot of shrimps, but I forget.
Yeah. Sounds like you do a really good job at quoting it.
That was an inopportune moment to go blank there. I'm like, I know there's more types of shrimp. Popcorn shrimp. But
right,
yeah, you guys have good movies. They're both solid movies, but definitely not his best. His best movie of all time, in my opinion, is Catch Me If You Can. And I love that movie for the fact that I'm like, I would never do it because I'm a law-abiding citizen, but if I was ever a criminal, that's the type of criminal I would be. And if I was ever a investigator or detective, I would be like Tom Hanks. Like, I'd be going after the white-collar crime circuit because
that's where it's hurting America right now.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to be involved in like scary gunfights. I just want to be like, oh, you think you can outsmart me, huh? But I can follow your checks. They're bouncing.
I'm gonna catch you, Mr. Abagnale.
No, I just think it's kind of the premise of. I mean, I love Tom Hanks in that movie. I also really like DiCaprio's performance as well, as far as like transitioning from like how his character grows, which is kind of weird because you would never know wasn't his character like supposed to start off like at 16. Like, speaking of based on true stories, I think he was like 16 when he started at Frank Abagnale.
Yeah,
but people thought he was an adult. He pretended to be a doctor, but I don't know. That was a good movie. That's all. Plus, it's got Christopher Walken in it.
I once had a piece of cake, and I hid it away for some time. Just kidding. I can't do his voice. You gotta be some kind of special to do his voice.
You're coming at me all wrong.
You're coming at me
again. I'll stab you in the face with a soldering iron.
Cowbell.
Well, let's see. My name is Christopher Walken.
Not even close. I won't even say that I was even close. You are miles away from me. My name is Christopher Walken.
Wait, let me try. I got a fever.
You sound like a southern drawl.
The only prescription is more cowbell.
At first, he was like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to go on a diet because then I get less calories. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Travis Cole, we're glad we can know your name right now.
Did he disappear?
I'm coming back. Hold on.
I think he just flipped from to another screen.
But so Catch Me If You Can, that's based on a true story, right? You said?
Yeah.
So how much? What?
How much is it actually based on a true story?
I don't know. I've never actually read the book, but there is a book. There is a book, and I've never read the book, but maybe one of these days I'll get to it, because I think I can't remember if somebody either told me the book was better, which is normal, or if it was worse, which is abnormal. But
well, there's not many other options than that. It's either better or it's worse.
But I mean, if you think about it, Saving Private Ryan was based on a true story.
Very loosely, and we talked about that in another episode.
And so was Apollo 13.
Very loosely.
And then I wanted to make it like, if I didn't choose Forrest Gump, it was going to be Captain Phillips, which is also another true story.
Oh.
And mainly because of, like, at the end when he's finally rescued and then he, like, is getting checked out medically and then he starts to just bawl. Like, for some reason, that got me. I started crying when I watched it. It's very emotional and very well acted.
If you think about it, I think Tom Hanks has been in quite a few, especially in his late, like, second half of his career. It's been a lot of movies based on true stories.
Yeah. That's because Ron
I haven't
Howard
seen it. Isn't there like a spy movie that came out that he was in?
I think
like
so.
3 or 4 years ago. Trying to remember what it's called. I never ended up seeing it, but people kept saying it's really good, and I just never got a
Some
chance.
movie about United States, like
and
trading
Russia
a
or something.
prisoner, a spy prisoner with Russia or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually a good movie. I can't remember its name though right now. But yeah, all good movies. Honestly, you could sit there and watch every single one of them. Even before he became a dramatic actor, winning freaking Oscars. He was in comedies that were great. He was in Bachelor Party. He was in Burbs.
You've got mail.
You've got mail. Then, well, see, he went from comedies to rom-coms to drama. So.
Oh yeah, Big.
That was a good movie. Great. I liked that movie when I was a kid.
So, I think we should just do an episode on all Tom Hanks movies, really. But we got to. But
speaking of, here's a trivia question for you, just as you transition into our main topic. How many movies has Tom Hanks been an actor in to this point that have been released?
107.
I'm gonna say 35.
Wow, you guys are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I believe, is 59.
Really?
Kind of surprised me. I was more like with Trav. I thought it would be like 100, but I mean, 59 is a lot.
The thing is, he picks very carefully. He's not just going to go out for that paycheck. Although I'm pretty sure Lady Killers was that paycheck, but we don't need to talk about that.
Well,
I guess if you think about it, like 59 movies is like almost 2 movies a year for 30 years. And I mean, I know he's been around since like the 80s, but it's like a movie and a half a year for his career. It's not bad. It's like keeps you in the limelight.
Yep. So anyway, all right, well, let's get to our Real versus Real, episode 1, Apollo 13. Take it away, Alan Chan.
All right, so the first thing I'm going to mention that was not quite accurate as portrayed in Apollo 13 is the now like one of the top 50 most quoted lines from any movie in history.
Wait, is that the Houston? We have a problem?
Yeah. So when Tom Hanks gets on the comm after the oxygen tank explodes and says, "Houston, we have a problem," that's not actually how it went down and what was said. So what actually was said is that
was it Houston, holy shit.
So what actually happened was one of the astronauts, not played by Tom Hanks, started by saying, "Okay, Houston," but then he was interrupted by the other astronaut, not played by Tom Hanks, who started saying, "I believe we've had a problem here." And then the ground control asked the astronauts to repeat what they just said, and then the astronaut Lovell, who was played by Tom Hanks, said, "Houston, we've had a problem."
Oh, it's a very crucial apostrophe VE there.
Yeah. So just to make it more clear for the movie and be like have a more sense of urgency, they just summed it all up to "Houston, we have a problem." And
well, I guess because this movie, Apollo 13 was 1970. What year was
when it happened? It was no Apollo 13
because they landed on the moon. That was Apollo 11. It was 69.
I think it was 70, 71, something like that.
Okay, so whenever around that time frame, but it's just so since that happened then, and obviously this movie came out in the 90s. So there's probably there's a decent chunk of people that either like probably have never seen the movie or don't fully know the story, but loosely, like in 30 seconds, like what's the story that you're following so people understand what you're talking about?
So the story is Apollo 13 was supposed to go and land on the moon, and then these 3 astronauts were also going to walk on the surface of the moon, just in a different area of the moon, the same way that like Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and that whole crew did on Apollo 11, I think. But when they on their way to the moon, in the command module, canister or like some oxygen tank like had an explosion and caused a fire or whatever. So in the end, they had to all get into the lunar module and basically seal off the lunar module and use that as their like temporary headquarters.
Is the lunar module the thing that would have landed on the moon, the portion that would have landed on the moon?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the lunar module detaches from the rest of it. And then 2 astronauts go down in the lunar module, land on the moon, do their moon walks like Michael Jackson, and then get back in the lunar module, take back off, and then meet up with the space capsule, whatever you call it. The rest of it.
Or orbiting the moon.
Yeah, that's orbiting the moon. They meet back up with that, which has the 3rd astronaut in it, and then they all launch back or go back toward Earth, and then land.
So let's assume that we were the 3 astronauts that went up there, since there's 3 of us on this podcast right now. In your guys' opinions, which one of us would have stayed on the ship, and which 2 of us would have gone down and landed on the moon?
I would have landed on the moon.
Just like from personality standpoint. Like
I'd be the guy to stay in.
So no Mars and no moon for you, huh, Trav?
I'm not saying I wouldn't go to the moon. I'm just saying that I would just be that person. They'd be like, if they're just picking the poor soul or the poor sap out of a lineup of who's going to stay in the ship, it's going to be me. So that's just my luck.
But you would want to go on the moon if you had that chance.
Well, I'm non-confrontational, and so I'd probably be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's just do that." I'll do that.
Because to me, it just hit me. I'm like, if I would have traveled that far, how many miles is it from the moon to the Earth, or the Earth to the moon?
Oh, what? How many miles?
Yeah.
I think it's like an average of 238,000 miles.
So you just traveled 238,000 miles, and it's like literally right there. And it's like if you went to like Chuck E. Cheese or something, but you drove around the Earth 11 and a half times to get there, and then you got there into the parking lot, and you're like, I'll wait in the car.
I just want everybody out there in the world to know that Danny just compared the moon to Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, I'm not the first person to compare the moon to cheese, so.
Chuck E. Cheese. That place is a dump. In fact, I'm surprised it's going to make it through the pandemic. Have you seen the one in Layton?
Yeah. Is it going to make it through?
They've taken a paintbrush on the side of the building and put $2 menu.
What?
I think they're worried here that nobody's gonna eat their food.
Yeah. No, that's definitely not a business plan you want to be involved in right now.
Yeah. So
anyway, yeah. So okay, got it. So I think we got the main story. So this group went up, tried to be another group that landed on the moon, but obviously something went wrong, and that's what you're describing, and that's kind of what the movie in general is about.
Yeah, you have to use the lunar module as a lifeboat to take refuge in, which causes issues because the lunar module wasn't made to house 3 astronauts for 4 days, because it was supposed to just go down to the moon surface and then
come back up and dock with
then they would come back up, whatever. Which, yeah, and just with 2 people instead of 3, not for 4 days. So the CO2 scrubbers on the lunar module weren't made to filter out CO2 from the atmosphere for 4 days. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they had to find a work. I'll get to that part later, though. So the next thing that was not accurate is that they treated the dark side of the moon and the far side of the moon as if they were the same thing. So
they're not.
What?
They're not.
No. So there's like a period when in the movie where they go behind the moon, and then they're in blackout communication with NASA because no signal can get through the moon. We didn't have like satellites to bounce it off of out in lunar orbit or whatever. So when you go behind the moon until you come back out and are back in eyesight or line of sight with the Earth, you're in a communication blackout. But in the movie, when they go behind the moon and lose communication, they simultaneously go into the moon's shadow, and it's all of a sudden dark, which is not accurate. The far side of the moon just refers to the side of the moon that we never see, because the moon is tidally locked with the Earth. So if the Earth is this and the moon's this, then we always see the same exact side of the moon as it orbits around us.
That I knew, but so that's the far side of the moon?
So the far side of the moon is the side that we never see due to the moon's rotation period being exactly the same as its orbital period around the
Gotcha.
Earth.
So at certain times, like when it's a new moon, then the far side would actually be illuminated and we just can't see it.
Yeah, so on a new moon, the far side is completely in daylight. It's not dark. And we don't see it. When it's full moon, the far side is actually completely dark, and the far side and dark side match up perfectly. But
couldn't that have been the case when they were up there?
No, because when they went, it was I don't know if it was first quarter or third quarter, but the moon was about halfway illuminated from Earth. So it would have been making a 90-degree angle. So like if you have the sun's up right here, I'm doing this like flat if you're above it. So if the sun's here, the Earth is here, then the moon would have been here at like a 90-degree angle. Because then to us, only half the moon is lit up, but half of it is in dark. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So, yeah. So if they wanted to be accurate, then they would have either entered the shadow before blackout or communication blackout, and then the blackout would have happened. Or if the moon was over here on this side of Earth, then it would have been the opposite. They would have entered the blackout and then later entered the shadow of the moon.
I think the fact that took, I mean, you did a really good job of explaining it. It's nothing to do with the way you explained it, but the fact that it took like 2 or 3 minutes to explain it is probably why they didn't put it in the movie. Is because they didn't know how to fit that in there. Like, wait, I don't understand. Well, the dark side and the far side are actually different things. That's probably, I think, like Travis said, that's where movies like take liberties to simplify things for the masses.
Because they're really going to be they're going to be like, who's going to be asking about this? And one guy in the back's like, there's going to be a kid named Alan Barnes. He's going to know.
I mean, like, I think it is. I think it's interesting. Like, I think it's interesting, and I like knowing the facts of how things really work. So, like, to me, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I like get why Alan's bringing it up because it is interesting to know that. But from like a purely like for most just average person going to the movies on a Saturday afternoon, they probably don't care. All they want to do is like, I want to see the explosions and I want to see like Tom Hanks like trying to call Houston because that's cool.
It's like, try and call Houston. It'd be cool.
The way you say it, I imagine him just pulling out one of those old school cordless phones, be like, beep, 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 beep.
What are you doing? I'm trying to call Houston. Danny's in the audience. He's like, this is the best part of the movie.
He's calling Houston.
Trying to call Houston.
Houston answers just, hello.
This is Houston.
Is this Houston? Yeah.
What up, dude?
What of it?
And I'd be like, is this Whitney or Alan?
Huh?
Oh my.
Whitney Houston or Alan Houston?
Okay.
You don't remember Alan Houston, basketball player for the New York Knicks?
No.
In the 90s?
No. I don't think anybody does. And
I'm sure his parents do. But we can move on. That joke was probably rated an 8 out of 10. But
yeah, if you're on an inverted scale.
All right, let's go. Sorry. My fault. I shouldn't have brought up the Houston awesomeness.
So in another part, the astronaut Hayes, which is played by Bill Paxton, points out the Sea of Tranquility on the moon as they're going over it. But in the scene, what they actually show isn't the scene of the Sea of Tranquility. It's the Marsh of Decay.
Oh.
So
now that could have been fixed.
Yeah.
That is kind of a pointless mistake to make, in my opinion, because that takes no extra time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just lazy writing.
Yeah.
I feel like the Sea of Tranquility is like
film editing.
The most famous part, like landmark of the moon. Like everybody's heard of the Sea of Tranquility.
So can you see the Sea of Tranquility on the moon behind me?
It's that part that looks very tranquil. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I'm just curious. I didn't know if it was
exactly
something...
what the Sea of Tranquility is on this moon.
Oh. So you just spent 30 seconds explaining how everyone knows the Sea of Tranquility.
No, they've heard the Sea of Tranquility.
All right. Well, because I didn't know where it was either, so I just wanted to see if
it's one of these dark spots. So next is, so when they're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, they have to like adjust their trajectory, and they make a whole dramatic scene about it because in the movie they explain, our trajectory is off. We're coming in too shallow because our mission plans called for us having hundreds of pounds of moon rocks when we came back to re-enter Earth's atmosphere, but we obviously never landed on the moon, and so we don't have the extra weight from the moon rocks, which is throwing our trajectory off. That's actually not really what the big deal was and why their trajectory was off. That really didn't make too much of a difference in the end. What actually caused their trajectory to be off was that they had the lunar module still on there because they never landed on the moon with the lunar module. Oh yeah, so when you land on the moon with the lunar module and then you come back, the whole lunar module doesn't come back. It's just the small part of it that like detaches from the top and launches back up. So the whole rest of like with the legs and everything is still there on the moon from Apollo 11.
Is that because, I mean, there's still gravity on the moon, so they're trying to keep the weight as low as possible. And if they are bringing back samples, they want to be able to keep it lighter so they can get out of the moon's atmosphere and gravitational pull?
Yeah, basically. Like, from what you've probably all learned through watching SpaceX perfect reusing rocket boosters and all that is that for the entire history up until now of our space programs and getting people to space and all that stuff, we just waste pretty much 99% of everything that we use. All the rockets, like all that ever comes back is the tiniest little tip of the rocket that was launched into space. All the rest has been just like thrown in the oceans and left
or
behind
lost in space.
or on the moon. Yeah. And that's all due to you. The less weight you have, the easier it is to do things and move around in space or get off the Earth's surface or the moon's surface.
So to an alien species, we really are like just the messy, dirty thing in the universe that just like leaves our trash everywhere.
Basically, yeah.
And we're trying to get better at recycling.
Mm-hmm.
What's that saying, Trav? Recycle, reuse, release? Like the 3 R's. Repurpose.
Recycle, reduce, reuse.
Yeah.
Reduce. Like reduce the amount of garbage.
Release it in the atmosphere? In the ocean?
Maybe that's the problem that we have as humans. Too many of us are releasing, not reusing. But yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Al.
So anyway, so the lunar module was still on, it's like on the back of the whole space capsule coming back to Earth. And apparently it was leaking some water vapor that was shooting out behind them, which was causing a little bit of extra thrust, which caused them to be coming in, I guess, too fast, which would make you
basically skip like a rock, right?
Approach. Huh?
So it was like skip like a rock over the...
Yeah, so if you come in too shallow because you're coming in too fast, you would like bounce off the top of the atmosphere like a rock skipping over water, which is not good if you're trying to get back to Earth.
So in a way, like you need to, and I'm just trying to understand, you need to basically pierce. So it's like being a diver. Like that's why they dive kind of like hands extended over their heads, right? Like straight down, because they're piercing the water when they land as opposed to being like belly flopping.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what the angle is that the rockets need to enter the atmosphere at typically, or that they typically do? Is it 45-degree angle, or is it like even steeper? Is it like an 80-degree angle?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Really. I think it all depends. It's just going to depend on your entry speed though, too. That's a lot of it. So the angle's going to change. It's not always
constant.
It's like it's not a constant angle. It all just depends on your velocity coming in. So. And
then on top of it, when it's coming through, part of the reason is not only does it have to get through the atmosphere, but you can't have it being so broadside that it just burns up because it's having to fight so much more atmospheric pressure all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, what are those things called that they put on them? The shields.
Heat shields?
Yeah. What are those made out of?
I don't know now. Like, I'm sure they have like different materials you can make them out of, but I want to say like ceramic tile type things almost.
Okay.
Something that's really good at insulating.
Is this a question that's been troubling you for a long time?
Well, I was kind of looking forward to this episode because I was like, there's going to be a lot of questions I need answered.
It's just, you seemed very disappointed in that answer. Like,
well,
no.
I feel like I thought it was going to be something more like space agey and not like they put some pottery on the outside.
You can't just say like it depends on, material science is always changing. We find out new stuff. I'm sure they've updated stuff since Apollo 13. I don't know what they used exactly on Apollo 13. I just know like on the space
Did you
shuttle.
catch any of that, Trav?
What, did I freeze?
Something happened. I just caught Apollo 13. So
I'm saying material science has come a long way since Apollo 13. So I don't know if they're using the exact same materials for their heat shields or what they're using.
No, it's fine. I guess I know like Velcro and Tang were both created by NASA, right? So what's wrong, Trav? Can I not talk?
It's part of the conversation. I know Velcro and Tang. Those were major things created by NASA. And I was just kind of hoping that the shields that they put on the outside of the pod was a little bit more than just pottery.
He's just bringing up Tang because he mentioned Tang in our last episode.
Wasn't Dippin' Dots also created by NASA?
Maybe.
Was it?
It's like the freeze-dried technology.
Well, yeah, I know what it is. But why?
So that they could have ice cream in space, I think.
I know that, like on the International Space Station, for like special occasions, sometimes the Russian cosmonauts will trade some of their like Russian stew with American astronauts for their ice cream.
It's not a very fair trade for the Americans.
Why
I
not?
don't know, maybe it's the greatest stew ever.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, I will trade you famous Russian stew for your disgusting frozen milk.
Famous Russian stew.
Why such little spheres?
This is not ice cream. This is bullshit trade.
You have little ice cream scooper.
In Russia, we have big frozen bars. But
Compared to your tiny American balls.
So what else? Was there anything else, or because I didn't know if you're going chronologically through the movie, or I just lost my voice.
Why would I go chronologically?
Like just with how the movie went, because they've entered the Earth.
Yeah, because you're like they had the problem, then they went behind the moon, and then now they're coming back, and I was like,
I'm going in order of how I found, just like what I came across on the internet. So
okay,
what else?
Sorry.
All right, the next thing is we'll start hurrying these along. No more heat shield questions.
All right, I'll keep my questions to a minimum.
In the movie, during liftoff, Saturn V, and I'm assuming it's called the Saturn V. Well, maybe not. Maybe it was just the 5th iteration, but it also has 5 engine boosters on the bottom.
The Saturn V is the rocket that they took.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's the name of the rocket. But so it has 5 engines, meaning like the nozzles on the bottom, the cone nozzle things that you see. Each one of those are an engine. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one in the middle. So like the pattern on a 5 domino, that's number 5, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Dice.
In the movie on liftoff.
Yeah, dice is a better one.
Yes, on dice. Die. Dice.
That's rude.
Singular, yes.
So the middle one didn't fire, I guess. So they ended up, and I think it's accurate in the movie the way they did it. They just had to burn, like it was a pretty easy fix. They just burned the other 4 for 34 seconds longer to make up for that 5th one not firing.
So I'm assuming they have more than enough fuel for reasons like that, is what they're assuming. Like,
well, I don't think it makes a difference how much fuel you have, because you have an entire engine not firing, so you have more fuel from that one not firing that you can use for the other 4 to burn longer.
okay.
You need extra fuel for the other ones to burn longer if the 5th one isn't using any fuel.
Got it.
Dummy.
Sorry. Makes sense. I would still be the one just putting pottery on my space capsule. So,
and as far as your just for a contingency putting extra fuel on a rocket, I'm pretty sure that's the opposite of what you would do, because you're, like we mentioned before, you're trying to save the most amount of weight possible, because every pound you have to put on there in fuel is another pound you have to launch up with, which takes more fuel.
that's true. It's counterproductive.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of what's called the rocket equation, which is like, well, yeah, so if it's so hard to get into space or whatever, just can't you just put more fuel in the rocket? But then, yeah, it's like every time you put more fuel in, you need more fuel to be able to launch that extra fuel. So it's like there comes a point where you could put in a ton of extra fuel, but the extra actual boost you'll get from it is minuscule.
So it's law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Good to know.
But anyway, so the thing that was wrong in the movie that didn't match reality, it's a pretty minor thing, is on their like dashboard, you see like these 5 lights that represent each engine, and the middle one that didn't fire or whatever, that was malfunctioning, it's blinking in the movie, going ee, 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 where in real life it didn't blink, it was just off. The other 4 were lit up, and the middle one just wasn't lit up.
Like, I know that these are Apollo 13 did a good job, in my opinion.
That's what I was kind of getting at too. I'm like, these are very small things.
Well, I guess when either Ron Howard is it Ron Howard that?
Yeah, Ron Howard did the film.
Either him or Tom Hanks was asked about it. They were like, yeah, we took some artistic liberties on that because as a viewer, we want to draw your attention to the fact that one didn't fire. And so it draws more attention as the viewer,
because it's blinking,
versus just it's not lit up. If that makes sense. So
yeah. Well, I think a lot of these make sense. Like probably the Sea of Tranquility one is one that they could have fixed without changing really anything about the movie. But yeah, so far I agree with Trav. They seem pretty minute. I mean, literally,
which is good though. I mean, it's interesting stuff, but it's good that you have a film that did so well.
Pretty good.
That it was historically accurate.
Yeah, it is. Like in some stuff that I read, the actual astronauts and people from NASA, when the movie first came out and they saw it, they were pretty much amazed with how accurate it was. Like all the whole command module and the dashboard of that, and everything was like perfectly accurate the way it looked. And for the movie, they basically just made an exact replica. So
cool.
Perfectly accurate. The next thing real quick. So when in the movie, I guess it's like some big, how would I say this? They made like a big to-do about, coming up with the idea on the spot of using the lunar module as basically their lifeboat that they can.
Like when the fire happened.
Yeah, and they made a big to-do about that being like, oh, just like on the spot they made that up, and like it ended up working out. But really, in real life, they had run tons of simulations, and like something similar to what happened on Apollo 13, what they actually had run simulations like that before. So it was all basically, they already had that contingency plan of getting into the lunar module and then using that.
So no one really had to tell them. They just knew that that's what we have to do.
Yeah. It wasn't like they invented that on the spot in the heat of the moment.
I mean, I think the big scene, and I'm assuming you're going to get to this, so if it's not next, you can wait. I can wait, but is when they have to, like, my favorite scene is when they have to figure out how to make a contraption, I think, that helps them breathe.
Yeah.
And they dump out the stuff on the table, and they're like, we have to figure out how to do this, and this is all we got. And we got like X amount of time.
So that's coming up in just a second.
Okay.
So the next thing is in the movie, the flight director, who's like back at NASA, played by Ed Harris. You guys know Ed Harris?
Love Ed Harris.
So in the movie, he's like, one of his famous lines is saying, failure is not an option. And he actually never said that.
How do they know?
Huh?
Even your own memory is not that good.
Because I don't know. He just remembers never saying it. And he actually remembers, this says, ask Krantz, that's who he was playing, ask Krantz what he actually told flight controllers, and he rattles it off without a moment's hesitation a half century later. So apparently he's memorized exactly what he said. Maybe in a moment like that, you know it's going to be like some part of history forever. And so you just like start memorizing everything that's going on. So you're like, when they make a movie about this, I can tell them this is how it should be.
So what did he say?
But what he actually said, he didn't say failure is not an option. He said, I have never lost an American in space. Sure as hell aren't going to lose one now. This crew is coming home. You've got to believe it. Your team must believe it, and we must make it happen.
Oh.
That would have been better.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. That sounds way better than just his failure's not an option.
Yeah, so like even when he's asked about it now, when he's asked, does he wish he had said failure is not an option? Instead, he says, no, I'm satisfied with what I said. Okay, so now we're getting to what you were talking about, which is the CO2 scrubber fix, which is just like getting rid of the CO2 that you're obviously
breathing out.
Yeah. So the lunar module, as I was saying before, it wasn't set up or made to handle 3 people being in it for 4 days and to be able to scrub that amount of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So they had to come up with a fix of how we're going to deal with all this CO2 that it can't handle. So what you were asking, did they actually like throw down a bunch of parts down at NASA and be like, we got to make this out of this, and that's all we have? And basically, not really. That's not really actually how it happened.
Seems like a very crucial piece.
So again, kind of similar with them they already had
a contingency.
Yeah, a contingency that they already had like for something similar. So it wasn't a huge problem. Really, it only took them like an hour and a half to come up with the device to fix it, because someone had already in a simulation designed it before. And so they basically just had to call up that guy and be like, hey, that one thing that you made, how did you make it exactly again? And yeah, they just had to use like a vacuum.
I don't think they had voicemail back then. So if he didn't answer his phone.
Yeah, I'm sure the dude was glued to the TV, dude. Like, he was probably like calling, be like, "Hey guys, you think you might like need that contraption I made? I'll sell it to you real cheap."
Just $5 million US.
Like, dude, NASA owns you. Everything you create is owned by NASA. Whatever.
I could just see him though. He's like, "Oh, I worked really hard. I'm going on vacation," and he's just chilling on a beach somewhere. And they're like, "We can't get a hold of Johnson."
He works so hard getting people into space that he's just like the day before they leave to actually go in space. He's like, "I'm just gonna assume everything is
So I guess the guy's name.
Touche, Trav. Touche.
So I guess the guy's name was Joe Kerwin, that had previously, like, in a simulation made the device. But so I'll just read this paragraph real quick that I found that talks about it. So it says the solution that they came up with was that they could make a way to use a vacuum cleaner in the command module with some plastic bags that they cut up and tape them to lithium hydroxide cartridges and blow through it with the vacuum cleaner. So that would filter out, I guess, lithium hydroxide cartridges, like collect the CO2 out of the air or something. And then
how do they get new oxygen in? Is that part of this whole process, or
new oxygen?
Yeah, because if you're breathing in the oxygen and then you're breathing out CO2, you can
they
filter
had
out the
oxygen.
CO2.
Yeah, I don't know if they were short on oxygen or if they just had oxygen and it was just getting rid of the buildup of CO2.
Yeah, I think the oxygen wasn't the problem. It was just the CO2.
CO2. I haven't. I need to watch it again. I haven't watched it for like probably a decade plus, and I like that movie. I wanted to get to watch it before we recorded, but just didn't get there.
So I guess in real life, what happened was someone said, "You remember what we did on that one simulator? Who did that?" And then after that, it was Joe Kerwin that I guess did it. So then it just says Joe Kerwin showed up, and we talked about how did you build that bag and what did you do? And then he told them.
He's like, no. I know. For if you're
audio people, they're like, "What?"
If you're just listening to the podcast, you don't see. He just literally is like, you're kind of like, I have an apple. I have a pen. Apple pen. I have a bag.
He just sticks them together.
I have a vacuum.
Vacuum bag. So, I mean, obviously, I think the moral of this is like NASA was pretty prepared for a lot of situations that could go wrong. And so the fact that they did go wrong, in essence, wasn't necessarily like as big of a surprise as it's portrayed to be in the movie. They were like, "Oh, well, that sucks, but we have the contingency in place for this."
Yeah. So real quick, I'll go through the last couple things.
Okay.
So I guess in the movie, when they're coming back for re-entry, they like go through this whole to-do about like, we got to transfer extra power from the lunar module batteries to the command module so that we can fire up the command module again or something like that. But in real life, the command module wasn't like short on power. It was just they realized, oh, since we never used like the lunar module and all that stuff, it still has a little bit of extra juice in its batteries, which, you know, might as well just use that and top off our command module batteries while we, you know, have it just in case. So it wasn't like a huge emergency. It was just like, well, there's some extra. We could just might as well transfer it over to the command module. So then they figured out how to do that and did it. And then on re-entry on the movie, they're in communications blackout again.
As they're entering the atmosphere, right?
As they're entering the atmosphere, which is to be expected. So I guess the blackout is supposed to be 3 minutes. And in the movie, the NASA spokesperson tells a reporter, it says, blackout lasts 3 minutes. If they're not back in 4, we'll know. Meaning like the spacecraft burned up and they're probably dead. But in real life, it was actually even more dramatic than that. Instead of 3 minute blackout, it was like they were communications blackout for 6 minutes.
Oh wow!
Oh,
Which,
and if they weren't back in 7, they'll know in real life.
No, are you joking?
Yeah, because then they're probably dead.
Well, no, it was in real life. It was even more of a blackout than expected.
Yeah. You said in the movie it's 3 minutes, and in 4 minutes they'll know. So if it's real life, it's 6 minutes. In 7 minutes, they'll know.
Oh, I think in real life it was still 3 minutes, 4 minutes. We'll know.
But they were gone for 6 minutes.
Oh,
that's why it was more dramatic.
What crap? So
I got you. Sorry, I'm on the same page now.
Or no. So I guess in real life, the blackout was supposed to be maybe 4.5 minutes, because this says blackout was a minute and 27 seconds longer than predicted. And it was quoted as being the toughest minute and a half we ever had by Ed Harris.
Ed Harris, who's the actor.
Yeah. The Krantz guy that he was playing said it.
Oh, okay.
I was like, what? Why did he say it? He just happened to be there like, you should be really good for this movie since you've already lived this once.
And so they aren't exactly 100% sure why the blackout lasted that long, but they're pretty sure it had to do with it still having a more shallow entry than
Expected.
Yeah, expected that. Somehow messed with it. And what was... Oh, the last thing is, so in the movie, the first words you hear after the blackout, after they're like all waiting in anticipation with the dramatic music, is finally Tom Hanks, playing astronaut Jim Lovell, says, "Houston, this is Odyssey. It's good to see you again." And then that leads to an eruption of cheers from Mission Control. But in reality, the first message wasn't from Lovell, and he didn't say, "Houston, this is Odyssey. It's good to see you again." The first thing you hear is astronaut Swigert, and all he says is, "Okay, Joe."
Why? Who, like Joe, as in the Joe that made the vacuum cleaner thing?
I guess so, because it says he was "Okay, Joe," said Swigert, speaking to Capcom Joe Kerwin.
Huh.
Yeah.
He's like, I've been in communication with Joe this whole time on this other radio I have. But cool.
Super anticlimactic on that one. So yes, they did change
in like 1 minute, like 3 things that they did get right. So, shortly after the explosion, flight director Harris Krantz says, "Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make things worse by guessing." And that was pretty much verbatim of what was actually said. The second thing is, in the movie, when the crew is trying to get the lunar module powered up, Tom Hanks asks Mission Control to double check his arithmetic, and you see Tom Hanks like doing math on this little card, and then he's like calling out the numbers back to Houston to double check them. Mm-hmm. And NASA says that really happened, and in fact the card that Lovell wrote the numbers on was sold at auction in 2011 for $389,000.
Crazy.
And the numbers that
I'll write some numbers for you.
The numbers that in the movie Tom Hanks is reading are the actual figures that in real life he was writing down.
Sweet.
And the last thing that was correct is, let me.
While you're looking that up, Al, I just want to point out to all the podcast listeners out there that Alan is extremely bright with all of this kind of, especially the space stuff. It's his kit and caboodle, I guess, whatever you call it. But sometimes when he says, I have 2 more things, he can't count because it's 3 or 4.
Well, that last thing I was going to read, it's dumb anyways. I'm not going to.
I don't want it. I just kidding. So, well, that's cool. Honestly, like we kind of already talked about. I mean, there's a few things that obviously, I mean, people, when they do movies, they make some, I think some things are right to change just because it makes it more, I guess, exciting
dramatic
to watch.
Yeah.
To watch in a movie. But when you have a situation like this that was already super dramatic, there's really not a lot that you need to change. So there's a few things said, yeah, I'm glad they changed it. That, you know, that last thing that was said from, okay, Joe, like that would just be super like.
Well, I
like,
think it would be super confusing too to the audience.
If you were in the Earth's atmosphere for 6 minutes, first thing you say is okay, Joe.
Well, it just goes to show you, like in real life, astronauts, they're like so well trained to just keep calm under any circumstance and to like keep their heart rate down and just think objectively no matter what. Don't let your emotions get in the way of it. If in a, like it's an emergency situation, that like it wouldn't surprise me that the first thing they just say is like, okay, Joe, what's up?
We made it.
You guys can pick us up sometime before this capsule sinks.
You really don't want to go through the Earth's atmosphere. It is just nothing but boring.
I thought you were going to say like fire and brimstone, but
no. So boring.
Been there, done that. No, I agree. Like, I agree with both of you guys. It sounds like, in essence, the movie's good because the original story is good.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot that they needed to change as far as making it more exciting because the story itself is already exciting. But the thing I do like that they did change for the movie is the suspense of them having to come up with and build that contraption that would take out the CO2. Because to me, that's one of my favorite parts of the movie is them like, we got to figure this out. And it wouldn't be as climactic if every situation that happened, they're just like, it's okay. We got a contingency plan.
We already trained for this. We got it. It's in the manual.
So like that does make the movie much better to put in those spots. But if there was one thing I would take from real life and put it in the movie, it would be the fact that that one character didn't just say, that said, what did he say? No mistakes can't be made, or we can't make a mistake.
Failure is not an option.
Yeah, in the movie, failure is not an option.
Yeah, but his real answer that you quoted earlier was much better, in my opinion.
I'll read it one more time, what he actually said. Instead of failure is not an option, he actually said, I have never lost an American in space. Sure as hell aren't going to lose one now. This crew is coming home. You got to believe it. Your team must believe it. And we must make it happen.
Yeah.
Do you think like simultaneously he worked for like various governments around the world and he's like, I've lost 73 Chinese, I've lost a bunch of Russians, but never an American.
I do think so.
All right, well, that's a good note to end on. Good episode, guys. Hope you guys listening to us enjoyed that. I will tell you, I really want to go watch Apollo 13 now. So,
me too.
I think we're gonna all want to, like, regardless of if we. Oops, I kind of disappeared for a second. Regardless of if we actually watch them previous to the podcast episodes, we're all going to watch the movies that we cover and talk about. But next week, I believe it's my turn. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. Do you know what you're doing?
I don't. I have a couple of ideas. There's one that I was thinking about doing, but I don't think I'm going to do it because I'm pretty sure if anybody other than myself has seen it, it's the other Trav. I know definitely you guys have not. And I'd rather talk about something that you guys have seen too. So I'm going to have to go and do a little bit of research.
Were you think is it Independence Day you were thinking of? Because I've seen that.
No. We'll never do an episode on Independence
Which
Day.
Independence Day?
Because that will go 3 hours or longer. So... but anyway, so so make sure you tune in next week as we cover more real versus real for my episode, and then after that we got
me,
Danny, and then Trav. Which
I think
we
already know. I think we already know what we're gonna do, but we'll keep that a little bit in suspense. Maybe mention mine at the end of next episode, and then Trav's at the end of my episode. So
yeah. So, but catch us on our social media pages. Just search for QCO Podcast. You can, honestly, you can listen to us pretty much anywhere. Was that an O? You had something?
Yeah, I totally forgot. I'll do it right at the end after you do it.
All right. One good thing to know, like that I've noticed that a lot of people, or at least that I've talked to, choose to listen. I mean, it's like I say, it's great to watch us on YouTube just because you can see our reactions. And apparently now that we're doing it on YouTube, we forget that people actually listen to it audio-wise on like.
It's true. We get the benefit of actually seeing the video live.
But I know like it's really easy to get to if you have Spotify. Just Google or just search for the QCO Podcast and it's there. So you can interact with us on our website, QCOpodcast.com. But we're here to like I said, interact, talk with you guys. If you have any movies that you'd actually really like us to do a real versus real, let us know because we can go an extra episode or two. It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So
do bonus episodes.
Exactly. So what do you have to say, Al? What's your last thing?
So I was just going to end on, there's a video I found of what now with data collected by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that NASA has up orbiting the moon right now. They've reconstructed exactly what the Apollo 13 astronauts would have seen as they went around the moon. So I was just going to end with just playing 2-minute video. And if you're listening to this, you're going to have to go to YouTube to watch it.
Okay. So I guess we're signing out, but enjoy this video and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah. Thanks.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of jumpy.
Is it supposed to be?
No.
How about this, Alan? We'll link to this video clip in the show notes.
Okay.
So people can see like what it's supposed to look like.
Should we finish out the video?
I don't think you need to.
50 seconds left.
Is that the Sea of Tranquility?
Beautiful.
Sweet. You would think NASA, with all those millions of dollars from the government, would have a smoother video.
No, what I had to do was I was playing it off the internet and then trying to screen capture my screen as it played with it's called OBS Studio software. And then it ended up being all jumpy.
Oh.
But no. All right.
Gotcha.